Trudeau was one of the 43 world leaders in New Delhi, which means standing out was tough. But he did. Trudeau stood out by being snubbed most of the time. And to be honest, he did not really work hard to be noticed. But one leader did. That's British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. He had high expectations from this visit. Rishi Sunak joked about how some people called him India's son-in-law. I'm sure you know why. Sunak is married to Akshata Murthy. She's the daughter of Infosys founder Narayan Murthy. So Rishi Sunak had the best shot in New Delhi. He's a Hindu prime minister. He has an Indian wife. And there was some good social media chatter. So how did he do? Well, according to the British press, not so well. Look at this Guardian article. Rishi who? Sunak slips down pecking order in G20 scramble. Why is the British media saying that? Sunak was apparently supposed to meet Prime Minister Modi on Friday, and that too at his home, but the meeting never happened. Instead, the Indian Prime Minister met Joe Biden at his residence on Friday, and Sunak had to wait until Saturday. He ended up meeting Modi at the summit venue. If this is true, it's certainly a setback. This was Sunak's first visit to India after taking office. He was hoping to take the country by storm. On top of his agenda was a trade deal. India and Britain have been negotiating a free trade agreement for 18 months now. London is hoping to sign one by the end of this year, by the end of 2023. Rishi Sunak and his party need this deal. They're facing a lot of criticism over a botched up Brexit. A deal with India could fix that. So what did Sunak do? Well, everything he could, really. On Sunday, he visited a Hindu temple in New Delhi. Take a look at this. I must say, great pictures, but have they translated into solid gains? Rishi Sunak got his sit down with Modi on Saturday. They did discuss the free trade deal. Let me quote what the Indian government has said. Both leaders reviewed the progress of free trade agreement negotiations and expressed hope that the remaining issues could be addressed at the earliest so that a balanced, mutually beneficial and forward-looking free trade agreement is concluded soon. This is what they said after the meeting. And this could happen soon, maybe even the next month. India is hosting the Cricket World Cup this year. The tournament will be starting next month. So there is talk of Rishi Sunak returning to India for that. Maybe even watch the India-England match. But will he also get a deal in October? That is the question. Well, his strategy seems to be clear. Temples, cricket and Indian roots. Whether they give results is a different question altogether. As for the British media, their judgment seems a bit harsh. After all, no world leader really stood out. It was more about the agenda, about the Delhi Declaration, which is why we have sketched out the 5 big takeaways from this G20, the 5 big wins for India's G20 presidency. The first, of course, is the membership for the African Union. India spearheaded this proposal. It was not just a policy idea. It was about correcting a historical wrong. New Delhi can be proud of this success, and this picture sums it up. The Indian Prime Minister embracing the President of the African Union. This was just before he took his seat at the table. And where was Xi Jinping when this happened? Not even in the room. Forget the room, not even in the country. Now to success number 2 for India, the agenda and the participation. We mentioned some of this yesterday. India's G20 summit was attended by 43 world leaders. That's 20 national leaders, 9 guest countries, 14 heads of global agencies. This is the highest ever turnout at any G20 summit. The highest participation. The agenda was equally impressive. Look at the issues that were discussed. Climate financing, sustainable development, gender equality, cryptocurrency, reforming multilateralism and debt relief. The final Delhi Declaration was 34 pages long. India made sure that the focus was on social and economic issues, basically the G20's original mandate. Success number 3 was a focus on people-driven G20. Again, the numbers prove this. India held 220 meetings in 60 cities, 60. The idea was to take the G20 out of the national capital. Around 15 million people were involved in some manner, like in organizational work, or putting on cultural shows, or hospitality. India wanted to create a new template for G20. one that goes beyond closed-door meetings in the national capital. And the reason was quite simple. If the decisions affect people, then people should have a say in the decision-making process. India calls it democratization of the G20. It'll be interesting to see if other hosts take this forward. Now to success number 4, consensus building. It's easier said than done nowadays. Both the West and Russia came to the G20 with a fixed mindset, not an inch back. It could have very well derailed all other issues, but in the end, India forged a consensus, a statement that all countries could live with. It's important because of how divided our world is right now. The West has problems with Russia, the West also has problems with China, China has problems with Japan over the Fukushima water release, and South Korea has problems with China. In this backdrop, consensus is not easy. Which brings us to success number 5, restoring the G20's relevance and trust. Let's face it, no one has high expectations from the G20. We see a lot of bickering, a lot of political grandstanding. During the pandemic, this perception became worse. The G20 failed in vaccine deliveries. It failed to protect the global economy. So many people wondered, what's the point of it? Prime Minister Modi was aware of this problem. Listen to his remarks on day 1.
Friends, कोविड-19 के बाद विश्व में एक बहुत बड़ा संकट विश्वास के अभाव का आया है। युद्ध ने इस ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट को और गहरा किया है। आज G20 के प्रेसिडेंट के तौर पर भारत पूरी दुनिया का आह्वान करता है कि हम मिलकर सबसे पहले इस ग्लोबल ट्रस्ट डेफिसिट को एक विश्वास, एक भरोसे में बदलें। यह हम सभी के साथ मिलकर चलने का समय है।
Has that been achieved? For the most part, yes. All sides have called the summit a great success, including the Western countries and Russia. China, of course, is sulking. But either way, India has shown why the G20 is important, why it's necessary to save and expand this group. Which is why India invited guest countries from the global south, why India pushed for Africa's permanent membership. It is no secret that the G20 has problems. Its members are divided. But for all its flaws, India's presidency has shown us one thing, that the world is better off with G20 than without it. Meanwhile, in China, it's happening again. Another top minister of Xi Jinping has gone missing. This time, it's the defense minister. His name is Li Shangfu, and apparently, he has gone missing. This is according to an American diplomat, the US ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel. Look at what he's posted. President Xi's cabinet lineup now resembles an Agatha Christie novel. And then there were none. Let me, in fact, quote from his post. First, Foreign Minister Qin Gang goes missing, then the rocket force commanders go missing, and now Defense Minister Li Shangfu has not been seen in public for 2 weeks. Who's going to win this unemployment race, China's youth or Xi's cabinet? There is a hashtag at the end, mystery in Beijing building. What do we make of this? First, the facts. The ambassador has got his timeline off. He says General Li has not been seen in public for 2 weeks, but his last public engagement was on the 29th of August, so not 2 weeks yet. Having said that, where is he now? Where is China's defense minister? What has Beijing said about this? Well, the standard. We are not aware of the situation. That is the response from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. We are not aware of the situation. And this is serious. Beijing's latest Houdini Act deserves a closer look because it has implications beyond China. There is a shake-up in the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, the Chinese army, and it has left Chinese forces in disarray. Let's begin with the case of Li Shangfu, the defense minister. He was last seen at an event in Beijing. It was the third China-Africa Peace and Security Forum. We happen to have some pictures. General Li was the keynote speaker at this event. There were more than 100 delegates in the hall. Almost the entire African continent was represented. And this is what Li told them.
We uphold a common, neutral, cooperative and sustainable security mindset and follow a new security path of dialogue rather than confrontation, partnership rather than alliance, and win-win rather than zero sum.
而非零和的新型安全之路。
So he said nothing controversial. Defense Minister General Lee stuck to old talking points. He said China wants to work with Africa. He also took a subtle dig at the US. But since delivering this speech, he's been missing. Last week, President Xi Jinping inspected the PLA. He visited an army unit. China did not say exactly where, but all we know is this. Xi Jinping went to China's northeast and the Defense Minister, General Lee, was not with him. Someone else accompanied the president. What was the purpose of the visit? The Chinese president wanted to deliver a message. I have his statement. Listen to what he said. We must strictly enforce the education and management of troops and maintain a high degree of unity, security and stability. So a public call to improve the management of the PLA. Is this in any way linked to the defense minister and to his reported disappearance? Was Xi Jinping unhappy with him or his management of the PLA? It's hard to say and we do not wish to speculate, so let's look at some recent events. In the month of July, there was a purge in the PLA. 2 generals were sacked. These were men who led the PLA's rocket force. This department looks after China's nukes. And in this case too, Beijing followed the same playbook. First, the generals went missing, then they were sacked. Right after this shake-up, Xi Jinping made a statement. He ordered the Communist Party to maintain, quote-unquote, absolute leadership. And soon after that, an inquiry was launched. The PLA began looking into corruption cases, and these are old corruption cases, some of them more than 5 years old. The PLA's equipment department is under investigation. The cases are linked to hardware procurement. Reports say China is looking into 8 issues here. Among them is leaking information on projects and army units and helping certain companies secure bids, basically corruption. They also mention a date, October 2017. The PLA said it was investigating problems going back to October 2017. Why is this important? Guess who was leading the PLA's equipment department in October 2017? General Li Shangfu, now the missing defense minister. He led this department from September 2017 to October 2022. In 2023, that is this year, he became the defense minister of China. Is this the reason why he's gone missing? Is General Li caught up in a corruption case? We are not waiting for an answer from Beijing. It may never come. But the trajectory is quite clear. Xi Jinping seems intent on making sweeping changes to the PLA. As of June this year, China has purged more than 39 officials, including military cadres. They were put under investigation in October last year. Overall, this is Xi Jinping's 3rd cleanup campaign in the army, the 3rd in 10 years. Since he took over as president, millions of officials from different wings of the Chinese government have been purged. Millions. Now the PLA is at the receiving end for the 3rd time. So either the Chinese military is extremely corrupt or their commander-in-chief is extremely insecure. Either way, the disappearance of top ministers, first the foreign minister and now the defense minister, makes the world's 2nd largest economy look worse than a banana republic. And now let's turn our attention to the Maldives, the Asian archipelago nation. On Saturday, it voted in the much-awaited presidential election, its 4th election since 2008. 2008 is when the Maldives switched to multi-party democracy, so their democratic history is rather short. And this election was unlike any other. It is being viewed as a referendum, a vote not so much for the contestants as for the regional powers they seem to align with. We're talking about India and China. Who will have more influence in the Maldives? Unfortunately, that is how their election is being viewed. And the result was declared yesterday. No candidate managed to secure more than 50% of the vote. So the poll has now gone to a runoff. And in a surprising twist, the pro-China candidate is said to be in the lead. What does this mean for the Maldives and for the high geopolitical stakes in this region? Our next report tells you.
This is the Maldives, an Asian archipelago nation, home to over 500,000 people. The country became a multi-party democracy in 2008, and on Saturday it participated in an election. the nation's fourth presidential election, a much awaited one at that. This election was unlike any other. It's practically a referendum over which regional power will have the biggest influence over the Maldives, India or China. Before we get to that, let's talk about the elections. Over 280,000 Maldivians were eligible to vote. The election saw a turnout of about 80%, but no candidate managed to secure more than 50% of the votes. Now the poll has gone to a runoff which will be held on September 30th. The poll saw a record 8 candidates competing against each other, but in reality, the race has been shaped by 3 presidents: the incumbent, the breakaway, and the jailed. The incumbent being President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih. He is seeking a record second term, but it seems quite unlikely because he only got 39% of the votes. Solih was seen as the favourite. Chances are his reputation has taken a hit, thanks to his former colleague Mohammad Nasheed, the breakaway president. He became the Maldives' first democratically elected president in 2008. Today, he serves as the parliamentary speaker. Earlier this year, he quit the Maldivian Democratic Party, which increased challenges for Solih. Something that Solih's biggest contender took advantage of. We're talking about Male's mayor, Mohamed Muiz. He managed a lead in the election with about 46% of the votes. Now he will face Solih in the runoff. This is a remarkable achievement for Muiz. After all, he was a late selection. He's running from the People's National Congress. He got a chance to run after former President Abdullah Yameen was jailed. Yameen was barred from contesting following a corruption conviction. It remains to be seen if Muiz can continue this streak. If he can, it won't be good news for India. Chances are it won't be great for the Maldives either. Solih and Muiz aren't merely representing their respective parties, they're also representing 2 neighbouring countries vying for influence in the nation. Solih is perceived to be pro-India, while Muiz is seen as pro-China. During his term, Solih carried out a host of projects focused on health, education and infrastructure, many of which were backed by grants and loans from India worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So a victory for Solih will mean closer ties with New Delhi. But Muiz doesn't think this is a good thing. He doesn't support the nation's dependence on India. He's pledged to expel Indian military personnel stationed in the Maldives.
I don't believe that any other country's military force should come to our country and try to take over. So it's really bad for us.
This may not be the best thing for Maldivians, as it could return the country to authoritarianism. And that's not all. Muiz belongs to the People's National Congress. The party under jailed leader Abdullah Yameen was known for its China tilt. Yameen obtained over $1 billion in loans from Beijing, making promises that exceed the nation's economic capacity to deliver. Now their economy is strained by debt, and repayments to China are due in 2026. So it does matter who the Maldivians choose, as the new president will not only inherit economic woes, but also face high geopolitical stakes in the region. We'll have to wait for 3 weeks to know the people's verdict.
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In China, strong floodwaters swept people and their belongings away. In Chile, CCTV footage captured the exact moment when a 6.4 magnitude earthquake struck the country, and surfing dogs are making quite a splash at a charity surfathon in the United States. You don't want to miss this. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 2001, nearly 3,000 people were killed after 4 planes were hijacked by Al-Qaeda terrorists. 2 planes flew into the World Trade Center's Twin Towers in New York. The Twin Towers collapsed after a short while. Another plane crashed into the Pentagon. The attacks triggered America's global war on terror, including the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We've crossed 2 million subscribers on YouTube. This is arguably the fastest growing news platform, and we can't thank you enough for fueling this growth. All those of you who join us every day to watch this show and more, thank you. We launched Vantage 7 months ago, and these have been some very rewarding 7 months for us. So from the entire team here, heartfelt gratitude.